Hi guys, Ian with GunmakingUK. Today I wanted to talk to you about the finishing process on these pair of barrels. So when I say finishing, not the blacking itself, I mean actually the last bit we're going to do before they're put on the gun and ready to test fire. So this pair is from a really quite nice Purdey that we've got in. It's been purchased. It's been purchased by one of our American clients at auction, and then it's coming to us to be gone through before it heads over to the States. So yeah, let's get into it. So the ribs have been relayed on this gun. They've also been reblacked, and now we're ready for the polishing. So for those of you that don't know about the relaying of the ribs, so what that entails is guns like this, they get hot, they get cold, constantly they get wet, and in time the solder joint goes on the ribs and the ribs start to lift. Now that's quite bad because what can happen is you take it out in the rain, water gets underneath the ribs, and then it's going to start rusting inside and you can't see it. That can do some real long-term damage to your gun. So that process involves basically taking the ribs off, retinning and resoldering them back on, cleaning it all up, and then after that, it's reblacked. So what you'll see with these is if you give them a little tap with something quite soft, back of my saw there, they should ring like a bell. And what that noise tells you is that everything is tight and touching. If they're loose at all, if you do that test, you'll hear a rattle, and it's a dull thud and a rattle, and you'll hear the points in which the ribs are loose. So that work's all been completed. So now we're getting into cleaning them up and ready for final assembly. So the first thing we're going to do is actually dry off the barrels. The blacking process itself involves them being submerged in water and boiled quite a lot. So we just want to make sure that there's no residual moisture left anywhere in these barrels. So it is especially important if they're going to go on a plane, because what you don't want is for them to be boxed up, gone at altitude in different pressures, and any water's allowed to seep out. So yeah, let's dry them off. So then what we're going to do is warm up the barrels. And when I say warm, I mean warm. It's not anywhere near the temperature of tinning. So the ribs aren't going to come loose or anything like that. It's just warm enough that any water left will evaporate. So we'll get a torch on there on a super low flame. Gently work up and down those barrels. Like I say, it's not going to get hot. It's just going to be warm. We want to be able to touch the barrels and hold them with our hand. And if we can do that, it's fine. You want it to be so as it's warm, but not so hot that if you can't touch it. Obviously, we're going to focus down the bottom a little bit more, being that the barrels are that much thicker that they'll take a little bit more heating. And we'll just work that flame up and down like so. And now the barrels are all nice and dry, we're going to start polishing them off. So what that entails is pretty much taking the black off of bits that don't want to have black on them, which is mainly bearing surfaces, but also some for aesthetic as well. So we're going to get a bit of oil in the bores there, and we're just going to give the bores a quick clean out. So the way we do that is very simple. It's wire wool on a rod, on a drill, and obviously we change it depending on the bore size, but that goes in there like so, and you just work that up and down the barrel. Gets a little bit tight around the choke, that's absolutely fine. So one important point is to not let the rod hit around the actual breech of the gun there. So we just hold your hand like so, and that will just stop it from bouncing around. So what we'll do then is we'll just go through with a bit of blue roll, and we'll pretty much do this until it comes out clean. And that means the bore's going to be nice and lovely. So now we've got the bores all cleaned, we're going to move over to the actual polishing. So we spoke briefly in one of our other videos about the leg vise. So one of the reasons we like it so much is because when you're holding something like barrels, there's so much room inside compared to an engineer's vice that you can kind of get them in like that with your soft jaws. And, you know, you're just not at risk of sort of hitting anything, marking anything. So, yeah, just another reason why we like the leg vice so much. So I'm going to start with polishing the muzzle, then I'm going to move over to the loop, the lumps, and eventually the face. So all we do is just have a look there, and we're just going to ever so carefully start polishing off that black. We need to be really, really careful that we don't slip off down the side. We're not trying to sort of take much in the way of marks out here. We're just trying to clean that black off. So just going to finish that off with a little bit of 2000 paper just to get a bit of shine on there. And then for the final polish, again, we're back with our trusty buff stick. A little bit of polishing powder on there. We'll just give that a light going over. So next we're going to move on to the loop. So there's two really important parts, or three really important parts we do. So we're going to do it inside the loop. Obviously, we're being really careful not to remove any meat where the actual forend sits. You'd have to go quite far to cause a problem, but the actual forend bolt sits within this little hook here. So if you were to go a bit crazy with your polishing, you could end up making the forend loose. So the next bit we're going to do is this section here, which we call the run for the forend bolt. So the reason we take the black off of that is because that's a bearing surface that the forend runs up and down. So if you were to leave the black on, it would just get scuffed straight away anyway. So it's better to have a polished surface than to have black with scores on it. So the last bit of the loop we're going to polish is this section on the actual back of the loop. So the reason why, there's a big reason why it's so important to take the black off of here, because this is where the forend bears and pushes back onto the knuckle. So what can happen is if you don't have a nice smooth surface here, what can happen is the forend will actually lock in place, because the black itself, it's, you know, ultimately the black is a rust. And you can put the forend on if you haven't taken the black on, and it can just really lock into that black. Whereas if it's got a nice smooth surface, it will just slide over there, which is obviously far better. So now that we've done the loop, we're moving on to the actual lumps themselves. So this is a really, really, really important part. So this is in essence the joint of the gun. So this is what's holding the gun together. So you really, really don't want to be polishing it more than you need to. So some faces you can. So for example, the top and bottom doesn't do anything. You can polish that as much as you want. But inside the hook itself, you don't want to leave the black on there, because the black will scrape up against the actual cross pin, and you don't want that. So you just want to take it off, but we're going to be extra gentle, and all we're going to do is take the black off. We're not removing any material whatsoever. Just literally super smooth like that. 2 or 3 goes. And that's as much as that needs to be. So the same applies for the draw of the gun. The top section doesn't really do much, but the bottom section should really touch. So again, we have to take the black off, but we're just going to be super, super careful, and we're not going to take any material off, just the black itself. So now we're going to move on to the side of the lumps there. So again, really, really, really important to the joint of the gun. If you were to go mad polishing the front steel there, the gun's going to end up loose in the bar of the action. You don't want that. So the back one, doesn't really matter so much. So you can, if you want to, you could polish a bit more marks out of that, but absolutely not. You'd rather have marks left in it as long as it's smoothly functioning than make the gun loose. So what I'm going to do for that front lump is just take the black off. As I say, we're not going mad on polishing at all. Just doing enough just to take the black off. So what I'm going to do is keep polishing it and just until the black's gone. I'm not taking any material off whatsoever. So I'm going to take the black off. And then what I'm going to do is what we just call like a swirly polish, which is where we just swirl around like that. So I'm going to polish off the tops of the steels here and here. Now, I'm not going to polish off the flats. Reason being, it's a Purdey, and Purdey don't polish off the flats. So one thing that's really important when you're working on guns is really trying to emulate the original finishes, because every single factory has a different way they finish the guns. So for instance, if it was a Holland, those flats would be polished off. Purdey, they're not. So we'll continue that when we're restoring the gun. We'll keep everything as close to the original finishing as it can possibly be. So now I'm going to do inside the bites here. So you have got to be super careful with this section, because again, these bites are actually what hold the gun shut. So if you were to go mad and polish all the grip away, there wouldn't be much holding it closed. So again, like the other bearing surfaces, we're going to take just enough to get rid of the black and absolutely no more. So now we're going to do the face of the gun, and this is by far the bit that you don't want to overdo. There's nothing worse than having a gun that needs to be rejointed, not because it's had too much use, but purely because someone's decided they want to polish some marks out of the face. So all we do is start with some really, really fine paper and just gently go over that, just getting rid of that black. Absolutely nothing more. So now we've got the face all polished up. As I say, super, super gentle, just enough to take the black off. And then we've gone over with our trusty buff stick to shine it all up. So last bit really is striping the face. So the real reason you do it really is just because it looks nice. It hasn't really got a function. It's said that it was done to disguise the file marks in the face, which does make sense, because when you're jointing a gun, you don't really want to overly polish it and round the edges off. You want that surface to be really, really snug. And by leaving a lot of a 6-cut file mark in there, you get a better joint. So yeah, once it's been filed, when it's fitted, etc., we'll go over it, give it a quick lick over to make sure it's shiny, and then we're ready to actually put the stripes in. So all we're going to do, we've got our striping blade there, a little bit of paper over there, you fold it over, and one key thing is making sure it's really taut. If it's not nice and taut, you get it, the stripes will look really scuffy and not so clean. So make sure it's nice and taut on there, press it up with your fingers. Then all we're going to do is find the right angle, get it on the face, and just give it a little shimmy like that. And we're using the tool itself at an angle to see our spacing. And we're just going to work that all the way around the face. So that is the barrels all polished off and ready for final assembly. So yeah, we'll put the luggers back in, and yeah, then when the rest of the gun is fully assembled, she'll be ready to test.